Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Talk of the Trinity podcast. The players are not back yet in pre-season training, but we are keeping match fit by keeping you up to date with all things Villa, and also literally keeping up to date because I am joined by my co-host as always, Mr. Trinity himself, Will Forrest, out on one of his pre-season fitness regimes in and around the locale of his local undisclosed area. It's not Aston yet, but we are keeping fit. And what else we are doing is keeping you up to date on our Twitter page at Talk Trinity with all the latest rumours and also the latest polls. No doubt we will touch upon a couple of those during the course of this episode. If you want to delve into the memory bank of episodes gone by from the last season, you can check us out on our YouTube channel, Talk of the Trinity, or you can check us out on one of our audio providers, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Google, or on FanHub, or on any other good or bad audio provider that we have signed up for in the last week, or even some we don't even know we've signed up for. We are wherever you need us to be, and probably sometimes where we're not. But it's been a bit quiet on the incoming since our last episode. So we haven't got anybody new to talk about who has the traditional holding up of the shirt, of the scarf, of whatever item of clothing they could find from the club shop, which is a very nice tenuous link to we haven't signed any players, but we've got a new training kit coming out during when this episode comes out. It may have been released or it may just about to be released, depending on where you're listening to it. It is always a source of excitement in terms of when the new kit comes out. This is a little teaser in terms of, the training kit before the shirt. And speaking of teasers, I've teased that we've got Mr. Trinity ready on standby. So I'm going to bring him in now and say, in a question I know you've been dying to answer, what do you think of the new training kit?
Well, I haven't seen it yet. So it's a bit of a hard one to answer, isn't it? I imagine, though, that, if it is out there in the ethos and whatnot, and out in the world and whatnot, a little bit off I am at the moment, it looks nothing like the what the kit's going to look like. And there's a lot of people moaning about it already because that's what we like to do, isn't it? However, let's talk about kits just really quickly. Have you seen the rumoured home, away, and third kits that have been going around on the internet? And if you have, what do you think of those?
There's been a number of pictures kind of floating around, but it's always difficult to tell whether they're actually accurate or not, because I've seen a couple whereby let's just say the badge hasn't looked entirely legitimate. And that is a great link for what we're going to be talking about in a moment. So there's also kind of the underlying thing with Villa kits. You can't really do too much different with the home kit because the colours are pretty much set. It's always the away kit, especially the third kit, where things get a little more interesting. Although I'm a traditionalist in terms of the second kit should be white, should always be white. And then the third kit we can mess around with. But it's interesting to see. I know some clubs have come in. I think Brentford are one actually, who've said that they're going to be introducing what used to be the normal system when we were growing up back in the day, that you keep a kit for 2 years. So I think they're introducing that at Brentford. Something I'd like to see at Villa as well, to be honest. Is that something you'd be in favour for? Or I know we've previously discussed it and you were more in terms of changing maybe the third kit every year and keeping one of the others for a couple of seasons. What is your thought on the constant recycling of kits?
I think I agree with you. I remember back in the day when you used to get a new kit every couple of seasons, and I think that's how it should be. I think there's a lot of potential marketing opportunities, but also that those marketing opportunities would have their own potential pitfalls as well. I think, for example, if you have the same sponsor and the same manufacturer, then why not have a big multi-year deal, have a new home kit this season, and you keep that for next season as well. But next season, you bring in a new away kit, and you have that for 2 years then. So it's every other year, you're bringing out a new kit, And when you're charging the earth to fans and people who can't afford to buy these kits nowadays because they are astronomically priced, it's not so bad. Alternatively, why not have and with those sort of things, if you're doing it every other year, and I appreciate logistically the sponsorship and things like that, especially around Villa Park or any other stadium, it would be difficult. But if you had different sponsors for each kit, or if you had different manufacturers, now I imagine that'd be a bit more tricky, to be honest with you, then that would make it worthwhile as well, wouldn't it? Releasing them every other year. But I also suppose that if they're only making one kit for you, they'd want to release a new kit every season.
Yeah.
Personally, though, I agree with what Brentford are doing, and it's nice to see that Nike are considering taking that on board as well. They're talking about doing that at PSG, aren't they? Because of the environment and because of the cost of living. I mean, it costs enough to go and fill your car up. You don't need to be going and buying a new football kit every single, or two new football kits every year. One new one, yeah, understandable, and you still have that excitement. But I think as well, with the amount of times that kits change, it's not a copy and paste job, isn't it? Oh, we haven't had this one for a few years. You think about the home one that's been brandished around at the moment, it very much looks like the one where Darren Bent played for us, and we had the checkers down the side of it, and we had a black away shirt that had the checkered pattern down the side as well. I think it was FX Pro or something like that were sponsoring us at the time. It was made by Nike. So I think, well, I've seen it all before. And you look at, for example, West Ham. West Ham's home kit, the new one's lovely. It's got different patterns on the sleeves for the blue. It's not just claret shirt, blue sleeves. And if I'm honest with you, and you may not feel the same way after what you just mentioned about being a traditionalist, I would love it. Home kit is pure claret, socks and shorts as well. I'll go whole claret, maybe little bits of blue on the piping type of a thing, or blue badge, blue night castor, blue front sponsor, or whatever they want, And then the away kit, I'll go light blue, or white, and then have light blue for the third. It just mix it up a little bit, and it'd be nice to see some innovative patterns or designs on there. Castor made some decent kits, most notably the Rangers one from last season, their home one and their away one. I'd love to see something like that for us. However, it's probably going to just be a generic one, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it's the designs I have seen, and again, we don't know how legitimate they are, but they haven't exactly taken the breath away so far. But something I have seen that is legitimate, that has taken the breath away, and I know that friend of the show, Russell from the Cayman Island Lions, is absolutely loving what I'm about to describe. Have you seen what I can only describe as our Hawaiian-themed clothing range that we've just launched, with Hawaiian shirts, Hawaiian kind of bucket hats, and all sorts of other summer holiday. I am struggling to think of the word to describe it. Outfit choices. Are those something that you will be rocking down the streets of down on the beach of Weston-super-Mare, or is that going to be one whereby you're going to be giving it a wide berth?
Mate, I tell you what, I'm going to buy one for Russell if he hasn't bought one for himself. In fact, I'm going to set up a GoFundMe page so that he can get kitted out in the clubber. I like it. I tell you, it's a bit different. It's a bit out there. It's a bit, mate, you know what? Give it to the players and let them wear it on a Saturday. I like the bucket hat. I wish it had come out a couple of weeks before from when I went to Nebworth. But yeah, it's a bit of fun, isn't it? And I imagine that you'll get the shorts or something, maybe get your pins out for the first game of the season at home. So yeah, it's good. It's we're trying to make a bit more of a brand of Aston Villa, aren't we? Than we have done in the past. And I appreciate that. Your Bermuda shorts aren't going to set the world on fire, but it is what it is, and we'll one small step at a time.
Yeah, I mean, it is in terms of if you can't necessarily compete at the top end of the table, then steps you can take off the field to try and close the commercial gap, the merchandising gap. I mean, you've got to start somewhere. As you said, you've got to try and take any advantage you can to try and raise awareness of brand Villa. And speaking of raising awareness of brand Villa, there has been news this week of a consultation that is being launched by the club in respect of the badge. And to paraphrase what the press release said, it was generally felt that we need a more distinctive badge to compete with other Premier League rivals and also to reflect our history and standing in the footballing world, and that a consultation will be taking place with fans during the course of next season with a potential view to a new badge perhaps being ready on new kits or Hawaiian-based merchandise for the 2023-2024 season. What are your thoughts on potentially changing the badge, Will? Are you sad that we may be losing the current badge, or do you think it was about time for a refresh?
It's got to be about the third or fourth badge change that we've seen, isn't it, to be honest? That, you know, I think I was looking back at them the other day, and the round badge is very nice. I think you've got to have football club written in them, but I do worry that that's a bit wordy, to be honest with you. I like the fresher ideas of them. I think the line should be claret, should be all one colour. You know, it should match the rest of the badge really, because it just makes it a bit unique. Yeah, you know, if this is going to be the start of something new, and it helps the owners to really feel like it's their football club and whatnot, and helps galvanise this as a fan base and takes us forward, then that's great. I say, looking at some of the old badges, do you remember the ones from the early 90s where it was like the crest and you'd have the claret and blue stripes in the background? And yet all the lions mainly looked quite pathetic, didn't they? I think there was one with claws, and that was great. And then they got rid of it because they thought, oh, it wasn't quite right. But to be honest with you, if it was down to me and I could design the badge now, I would have a lion having a massive shit on a fossil, and have that on the front of the kit, really sticking it to West Brom because they're a bunch of you know what. But there we are. You know, I'm sure whatever the badge is will be great, and I suppose any time will tell you, you're going to be signing up for the consultation group. You're going to take my idea forward, aren't you?
I mean, they do say genius steals, but I think you would deserve all of the credit for your idea. What I will suggest, though, is that we get Steve Bruce on the panel just so he can be presented with your idea to see how that goes down. But I think it's a easy win in terms of trying to get engagement with fans, because it's increasingly the case over the last few years that fan pressure and fan demands to be more involved in the operation running of their club has come to the fore. And so I think if they are, and they are doing this to get the fan involvement, it's a nice touch. It's a simple touch, and hopefully it's a sign in terms of looking to keep the fans engaged, get them more engaged. And I hope that it will lead to other initiatives proposed by fans moving forwards, because I mean, one initiative where I think some progress has been made, but nearly not enough, and I think if fans had the choice, we would do a lot more, is in respect of honouring the team who won the European Cup and the league the season before. And I think we could do a whole episode in terms of why the club didn't particularly go to great lengths to honour the team in the years afterwards. There's now a row of pictures, I think, on the Trinity Road, and there was obviously a display on the pitch before and during the Crystal Palace game. But from a fan perspective, well, my personal fan perspective, I think we need to be doing a lot more in that sphere. You go to grounds like Old Trafford, Liverpool, Anfield, they make a real song and dance about their history and their trophies. They've obviously won a lot more than us, but I do think in terms of it is something we can do better, especially as time elapses from when we won the European Cup 40 years ago. We need to keep the story alive for the young generation of fans who, if you say we won the European Cup, they'd probably maybe perhaps laugh in your face and go, how did that happen? And I think there's one initiative which wasn't my idea, but I've seen, and I think it should be the simplest decision that is made by the club. And I think if they engage with fans, hopefully most would agree. Talk about the new the North Stand being redeveloped, plans submitted to increase the capacity of the ground to 50,000, potentially even more than that in the years following that. But that stand should be renamed the Ron Saunders stand. I'll refrain from using the word I was going to use in respect of the lack of celebration and gratitude, really, from the Villa hierarchy in the years following the European Cup. And obviously Saunders departed just before we won the European Cup, but it was his team. He built it. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have won the league and we wouldn't won the European Cup. And I think in terms of Villa as a club, really should be taking steps to honour his legacy. And for me, hopefully, if this fan consultation is going to continue, that fans are consulted in respect of those decisions. Because in terms of, does it affect, in terms of, it means a lot more to the fans than it does in terms of, you're not going to lose £100 million sponsorship. Well, unless you're going to rename the entire stadium and sell that to the sponsors, which I would be fundamentally, well, I don't know. I mean, my gut feel is I'd be against it. But in terms of most fans, even if we were, sold the stadium right, so we were known as the Gala Bingo Villa Park, everybody would still call it Villa Park. I mean, that's what happened in terms of at Newcastle St James's Park. I think that was Sports Direct Arena, wasn't it, or something like that, when Ashley was in charge, but nobody called it that. But yeah, I think in terms of naming stadium after, naming a stand after Saunders, that would be my fan consultation if I was asked. So the email about the fan badge, I'll go, not too fussed about that. Let the graphic designer sort it, but let's get Ron Saunders. Slightly different tangent from where we went into that conversation. But in terms of, for me, I think we need to do more on that side of things. And hopefully we will do more if we get the fans involved more.
I think that's a very valid point, and I was actually going to say to you, if you were going to rename something, do you rename the North Stand when that eventually gets the planning permission? And if so, what do you rename it to? You make a very good point there that we forget, or we don't do enough really, for 1981 and 82. 82 obviously gets remembered a lot more than 81. So different people have different opinions on what the bigger achievement was. Is 1982 a bigger achievement, or even nowadays is winning a European competition a bigger achievement, or is winning the league? For me, I'd take the league, because it's a culmination of more results, more form. You've got to be better over a longer period. It's not just one-off games. So as great as 1982 was, and the stories I remember from my granddad and my mum telling me, 1981 shouldn't be forgotten about either. Ron Saunders for that. He'd obviously be a candidate for the name change, or for the name of the stand. Tony Barton, to be fair, he got them there in the end, and he won it. So would it be fair to consider him? Is there anybody else who could potentially be considered? Any great previous players? I think too soon for Jack Grealish, to be honest with you. Could you have a Peter McParlin, Congo Waring, Paul McGrath, Brian Little, and Ian Taylor, who could be thrown into the mix? And the other question in some ways is, does it have to be the North Stand that gets changed? Could it be the Doug Ellis? Would you revert the Doug Ellis back to the Whittam name? Or do you want the memory of Doug Ellis, and And remember that as much as people wanted him out for a very long time, he kept our club afloat. He kept our club in business. He's somebody who, yeah, okay, there were times when he wouldn't go that extra 10 grand when we needed it on a Robbie Keane or a Janino, Roberto Carlos, Georgie King Cradley, Alan Shearer, all these names that were linked to the in the 90s and perhaps could have pushed us on just a little bit, but still, he's deserving of his name being ingrained in the folklore as well, isn't he? But would you go back to the Whittam name there? I suppose maybe that's a poll that we can put out. So remind me at the end of the episode, and I'll get that on. And speaking of changes, you alluded. Oh no, we've already spoken about the badge. I don't know why I was going to talk about the badge again. My guys, I need to concentrate. But one change then, coming into the new season, and we touched upon this at the end of the last episode, if you remember. There's going to be one Irish midfield maestro who no longer wears the claret and blue of Aston Villa. Conor Hourihane, great servant for the club, regardless of how you say his name. Scorer of great free kicks, absolutely belting, equalising goals in playoff semi-finals against idiots down the road, and just a genuinely great guy to have around the club. Sad to see Hourihane go, Baz. I know you're probably thinking that it's the right decision, but what are your thoughts about his time at the Villa?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of how much did we pay for him? About 3 million, maybe, if that.
Yeah, 2 to 2.5 rising, something like that, wasn't it? It wasn't any more than 3 million.
No, I mean, for that, you got to say certainly value was achieved in terms of his contribution to the club. As you mentioned there, a couple of great moments that he was directly involved in. Remember, did he score a hat-trick against Norwich?
Yeah, first midfielder to do so for Villa since David Platt. And David Platt, was he really a midfielder at that time? Was he playing in attack and he was on the verge of the England squad? But yes, hat-trick against Norwich. 2 from outside the box, and then one that was a post-range finish from a Keenan Davis cross. 4-1 win.
So I think he certainly, he's got his place in terms of recent, Villa history. He's earned his right to be commemorated, appreciated. In terms of, is he getting in the first team in 2022-2023 season, Steven Gerrard in charge? Probably not. So I think in terms of, was it the right decision in terms of the alternative was offer him a new deal? I don't think that was happening, to be honest. I mean, in terms of he hasn't really been threatening the first team. I think at the start of last season, maybe there was a little bit of debate between whether he could potentially be ahead of Jacob Ramsey in the Villa midfield pecking order. Those are kind of being put to bed last season by Ramsey's emergence and being able to establish himself in the team. So I think it's the right decision for everybody. Also for him, hopefully he can get a regular run of games wherever he ends up. I mean, from your perspective, I'm sure you're hoping he doesn't end up at West Brom, which is where the rumours are currently circulating. But he can still do a job in the Championship. And, we wish him all the best and thank him for his service, really. I mean, I don't think you'll find many Villa fans who are going to be really particularly negative in terms of their opinions of Hourihane. I mean, as you said, he'll always be a player associated with getting Villa back in the Premier League, and everybody who was involved in that is, always going to be getting a thanks from me. And speaking of somebody who may or may not be getting a thanks for the memories, Ashley Young was on the released list, but there's rumours that he may be in talks for a new contract. As of time of recording, he is not signed for Villa or signed for anybody else. Would you have Ashley Young back for another year, or do you think it's time to move on from Ashley Young also?
I would hope to see Ashley Young retire at the Villa, and I would like him to go out with a plan that he's going to retire rather than it being thrust upon him, really. I hope he signs for another year, and I hope part of that contract that sees him sign sees him getting some coaching role at the Villa as well. I think he'd have a lot to offer, whether that's starting off with, the under sevens, under eights, under nines, whatever it is, and then working his way up. Ashley Young over both spells has been a good servant for us. The first spell, obviously, he absolutely ripped it up for us, didn't he, when he was playing alongside Gabby, John Carew, Milner, Barry, Petrov, and the like. We had a formidable team. Martin O'Neill really knew how to get the best of him. We've got a different Ashley Young now, one that's not going to trouble the first team too much. But if you're playing him as one of the older players in the under-23s, and you're getting him to put an arm around the likes of, Ben Cushion and some of the other kids like Jacob Ramsey, like Aaron Ramsey, Chukwuemeka, Archer, and saying, and Philogene Bidet, a forgotten man down the Villa, really, getting his arm around them and having a chat with them and saying, look, guys, from my experience, this is the best thing to do. This is, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Maybe even showing him how to take some set pieces, because he wasn't bad at set pieces either, was he? I think he'd be a win-win for us. I think he'd be a good player to have him and around the squad. Jav, I liked him. They're good mate. He's a positive player to have there from what we know. So yeah, I hope he does sign. Give him a nice little contract that sees him end his career at the Villa, make a bit of money so he can go into coaching then, and yeah, take it from there. Hopefully, pops up at some point and captains us in the League Cup or the FA Cup when we've got the youngsters in.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, I say the point in terms of him being a good influence upon the younger players in the squad. For me, if he re-signs, it's likely to be reserve left back, and I would be slightly concerned if Young was our reserve left back, especially as there have been rumours flying around recently that we are in secret talks for a secret left back who we have speculated on one of our polls on the Talk Trinity Twitter page. We don't know who it is at time of recording, but for me, I'm probably in the camp of Ashley Young of thanks for the service. I mean, in terms of his first spell at Villa, he was part of, him, Barry, Milner, Downing, probably the best complete midfield in my supporting days of Villa. That is, kind of all across the board. I don't think we've had better in terms of, we literally had an England midfield, and then, well, it all got picked apart fairly quickly. So you got to thank him for that. But unless he's prepared to take quite a low value contract, you mentioned in terms of coaching, if it was kind of a player coach role with more of an emphasis on coaching, if that's something he's interested in, then yeah, maybe I could see that in terms of working. But in terms of him being a kind of a backup player for the squad, I would hope we would be in a position to improve during the course of the summer transfer window. And speaking of players that we've been linked with in terms of the summer transfer window, there was a brief hot moment whereby Gareth Bale was linked with a move to Villa. Those rumours have been firmly put to bed now that he has signed for a team in the MLS. I know we had a debate off air in terms of whether Gareth Bale would have been a good signing. We ran a poll on our Twitter page whereby I think it was just under 50% said no, about 35% said yes. It was going to be a debate on our episode, but it's kind of been superseded now. They signed somewhere else, which is a shame for our editing, because you were on one side of the debate in terms of you would have thought it'd be a good signing. I was on the other side for that it would only be really him interested for the World Cup, and we could do better in terms of looking for a longer term plan. We don't have to worry about it now because he's not coming. Are you really disappointed that he's not coming? Or was it one of those for you whereby nice if he came, but we'll be happy enough to carry on without him?
Yeah, exactly that. You took the words out of my mouth. I think, it would have been nice to come. He'd have offered something still had of hope. But then again, if he couldn't muster up the energy levels needed to play through Villa with Tottenham, then would he be able to? For us, I think he'd have been able to help mentor even Ings and Watkins, because he's a little bit older than them, Archer as well. But at the same time, I wouldn't want the old boys club coming, especially when you've got him linked, you've got Suarez linked. There's other older players who are being linked. We don't need that. Now we need to be looking at a good balance of experience and youth, and take it from there. And anyway, you and I and the rest of the Villa fans both know that he's not the biggest star or the biggest person kicking up a storm in the MLS at the moment. That, of course, is our very own Indiana Vassilev after his heroic for Inter Miami just the other night. Came on as an 83rd minute substitute with them 1-0 down, scored a breathtaking goal to equalise in the 87th minute before snatching a last minute winner to make it 2-1. Phil Neville's obviously on the phone to Stevie G, thanking him, and Stevie G saying, "Who's this?" And
how'd you get my number?
Yeah. I told Gary not to give it to you, mate. But there we go. I'll be popping round to his gaff later. But yeah, Bale's been and gone. I'd rather see Archer, to be honest, as one of the three that we start the season with as strikers. And I think most of the fans would agree.
Yep, and it was a nice moment for Vassilev, as you mentioned, those 2 goals. But quick yes/no question: Vassilev, is he going to play more than 10 games for Villa?
How many has he played so far?
I'll rephrase that. Is he going to play 10 more games for Villa?
No. I mean, he struggled at Burton, didn't he? And at some of the lower league teams, he'll be gone. When his contract runs out, I imagine that he'll be joining a Wigan Athletic, who ironically I think he may have been on loan at. He did very well at. But no, I don't see it happening.
So no, I don't really. So if he can have a couple more noteworthy games, we might be able to get a little bit of change out of some friends in the MLS, and that can go towards our transfer kitty. I suspect he won't be sold this summer, but I'd say, realistically speaking, we're just trying to get his value up as much as possible for somebody to come in. Unfortunately, I don't see him really having much of a future at Villa. But speaking of people who may or may not have a future at Villa, and we mentioned before Genius Steals, there was a recent article by Greg Evans in The Athletic, and it basically went through all of the players in the Villa first team squad and had a sentence about them in terms of maybe Gerard's thoughts on them, whether there's a realistic possibility they're going to be sold, whether they're going to stay, kind of trying to figure out kind of what Villa are going to be doing in terms of their current squad. And I'll throw some comments at you in terms of players who, well, every player got talked about, but in terms of starting from the front, we will lead from the front, and we'll lead with the main man, the number one striker at Villa at the moment, Cameron Archer. So we've talked about him before in terms of the current status. Rumour is that lots of clubs want him on loan. He'll get a shot at Villa at pre-season, and then the decision will be made whether to keep him in the squad or whether to loan him out, basically. Seems fair enough to me. It seems pretty much matches kind of what we've said when we've talked about Archer previously. You'd hope in terms of if he had a good pre-season, he'd get a chance in the squad, but maybe another loan for a season in the Championship would do him good. Or maybe we mentioned Rangers previously, get some European competition under his belt. So yeah, I mean, we'll see what he. Basically, we're expecting him to start against Walsall, and then we'll see how he does there.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. For me, I'd keep him round. I'd probably keep Keenan around. But if we don't sign anybody else, we've got to have options up front. I think that Gerrard will probably go for his 4-3-2-1 when he can do, and really use the summer to instill that into the players and their philosophies, especially when you've got the likes of Buendia and Coutinho who can play those number 10 roles. But as we've seen, and as I've said a few times, why just have one striker up front when you can have two? Ings and Watkins were starting to form quite a nice partnership. And let's get Archer breathing down the back of their neck, and giving him a run out in pre-season, but also giving him a chance off the bench now. You can have 5 substitutes. There'll be games where hopefully we're running away with a bit of a lead and we can afford to rest Watkins or Ings, take them off for a bit of the game, or where we might just need an injection of Cameron Archer's ruthlessness in front of goal. Keep him round. I'm sure he'll get quite a bit of game time, and towards the end of the season, if not next season, like 23-24, I'm sure he'll be knocking on the door for a start.
And that is a good point in terms of the recent change verified across the board, 4-5 subs now allowed in the Premier League. You would think, as you said there, that there is going to be more opportunities for first team minutes off the bench, especially, circumstances as you mentioned, whereby there's a comfortable lead. Speaking of players who maybe need some first team minutes, comment in respect to Louis Barry was on loan again to a League One club. I know Swindon were very pleased with him in the second half of the season. Would you, and obviously they were in League 2, fell at the playoff stage in terms of promotion from League 2 into League 1. Obviously, he started last season on loan at Ipswich, didn't work out. Would you send him to League 1? I mean, it seems sensible for me, to be honest. I think he's proved it in League 2. And I think if he is the player who we're hoping he will turn into, I think we do need to keep progressing him up the levels. Or do you think he can have a shot at the Championship?
To be honest with you, I just want to see him getting a lot of game time and him also playing at a team that are higher up in the league, where he's going to enjoy his football. He's going to go and get goals. I send him back to Swindon, to be honest with you. And I know that seems a bit of a really, you've got to test them. They've got to keep pushing up. I agree with that completely. With probably most of the other players, but because he was starting to find his form after a terrible spell at Ipswich, why not send him back to Swindon again? Say to them, look, you've got him until the 1st of January. If a League One club comes in, then we're going to look at sending him to a League One club then. Swindon might not go for it if they decide not to. You look for a League One club straight away, but they also might think, okay, well, let's cut some sort of a deal. If we can have Barry until January, if Barry leaves, we want somebody else then. One of the other good youngsters that you've got down the villa. Then maybe that, like a Virtual, somebody like that. Then why not try and strike that deal with them? I mean, I think Championship might be a bit too high for him. Top end of League One, maybe a little bit too high for him as well. But at the same time, to contradict my point, because I like doing that, if somebody like Sheffield Wednesday came in for him, I'd fight or Derby, I'd fight their hand off, because they're two good clubs, they're two good old-fashioned clubs. They're wanting to get back into the Championship. So yeah, I'd send him to one of those.
I'd say in terms of Derby, I'd want some assurances about what was going on kind of off the field before sending any players on loan there, because they could no manager currently. Takeover still hasn't happened. There's talk of a new person potentially coming in to finalise it this week. But yeah, I'd Sheffield Wednesday perhaps. I'd want him going to a stable club. Maybe because I'm biased, somewhere like Cheltenham Town.
I'd send him to. I'll tell you what. I'd send him straight to Derby. I'd tell him he's your manager. he could play every week then, take penalties and free kicks as well. Whereas if he goes to Sheffield Wednesday, all the Villa fans know that he would have probably the best supply line in League One, setting him off with little Barry Banner.
Yep, the Villa reunion. Sheffield Wednesday could go far. Speaking of players, who divide opinion, shall we say, and we're going to, for apologies to our friend of the show, Liam with the Qatar Lions, El Ghazi. Words from Greg Evans. Values dropped, but has a proven goals record in the top flight last year of his contract. Obviously, he went to Everton on loan in January, and that was, from his perspective, an absolute disaster. Would you keep him as a squad player for Villa for the last year of his deal? I wouldn't have thought he'd be a starting player. And, just get your last year out of him, thank him for the service. And if he has, an amazing year, maybe give him another year deal. Or would you be looking to sell this summer just to try and get some monetary fee back for him?
I would. Well, I'll be making Liam a very happy boy because I'd sell him. But I wouldn't sell him because I don't think he's good enough. He's got a proven record in the Premier League. He has scored goals for us. Ice cool killer penalties as well. Everton, what a joke that was, him going there. But they did change their manager, and that sort of thing can happen. I'd sell him and I'd wish him well, and I'd say thank you for all you did. In the big games when we needed him, he came up trumps. Look at the playoff final without his header. It's 1-1. It's penalties, or extra time. So I'd say thank you very much, Anwar, and let him be on his way wherever he needs to go. Don't forget, his form was that good that he was in the provisional Dutch squad before the last Euros. So hopefully he can go somewhere. He can push on, get a little bit of European football maybe as well. If he went back to Holland, I'd imagine he'd get to one of the top teams there and push his way forward. And hopefully he gets to go to the World Cup, and then we can make dreams come true, and he can meet Liam in person, and they can have a nice beer, or well, they can't have a beer because of religion and whatnot, but they can have a nice meet up, a handshake, and say, good luck, there's my sofa if you want to have a kick on it.
Yeah, but I say, especially you mentioned it's a World Cup year, if he's realistically got any chance of making the Dutch squad, which I suspect probably not, but if he did want to have a run at it, then playing for a team in Holland, you would suspect is going to be his best shot. So I would be on the side of you, to be honest. Thank him for the service, but realistically, he's not going to be first choice for Villa this season, and we're probably not going to be extending his contract at the end of it. So see if we can take something if any club is interested. It's a real shame that the Everton situation ended up being such a debacle, because half a season of doing decently in the Premier League might have increased his market options for us, but that wasn't to be. Traore, future undecided. 2 words from Greg Evans. Sell him or keep him?
2 words, bye-bye. Same words twice, actually. I'd sell Traore. I like him. I think he's a good player, but I don't think he fits into our system now with the 2 behind, or whether you put him up front as a 1. I think Gerrard likes him, but it means he hasn't seen enough. There'd be a different winger who I'd rather keep if we were gonna try and turn him into a striker or a number 10. But no, Traore for me. I'd thank you for all that you did for us when you were in that first season. You did very well, but I think he deserves first team football. So I'd say see you later.
Same for me. If there's a club who I don't think we'll get back what we paid for him, but if we can get, I'd say if we get half back of what we paid, then we've probably done all right. But I think it was unfortunate for him. Last season was just disrupted severely by injuries, and momentum has gone, and kind of we've moved on kind of largely. And I think hopefully in terms of the transfer market, a couple of players in will free up the opportunity to sell them and get some money in, but we'll wait and see. I'm going to throw in partly because I'm biased, but partly because it is an interesting debate. In terms of John McGinn, Greg Evans writes that he's a favourite of Gerrard. However, there have been rumours circulating that he's not happy at Villa. In terms of some rumours been circulating, potentially a disrupted influence behind the scenes. We should say there's that, the accuracy of those reports has been debated, so we don't really know if that's true or not. We ran a poll on our Twitter page in terms of whether you'd keep John McGinn or not. I think it was about 90% stay, 10% McGinn out, or McGout, whichever the phrase it was.
Yeah, McGout.
I would, for me, obviously, I would keep him. I read an interesting article in terms of if he was wanting to leave, where realistically would he go in terms of if he's going to stay in the Premier League? Because most are kind of what you call the top clubs wouldn't necessarily want him. And the club in this article that was linked to him, and they've also kind of been trying to make some splashes in the transfer market currently and linked with quite a few players. West Ham. Would you keep McGinn in terms of building the team around him, or do you think in terms of if a certain, most players got the price, we've had this debate before, but in terms of if we'll take West Ham, if West Ham came in with 50 million, would you sell?
Without wanting to bring a screeching halt to this podcast and future episodes, someone came in with 50 million for John McGinn. Yeah, I'd sell him. I think John McGinn's been a very good servant. I think he's got a lot more to offer though. I don't think he's fully reached his potential yet. Even at 27 years old, I think he's got a lot more to give, but he needs to find the right system. He's had a lot of different managers at the Villa. I'd hope that we don't sell him. I'd hope that he isn't a disruptive influence as well. I saw the rumours that him and Beale have had a big falling out, and that was one of the reasons why Beale left. So I'm sure the law of management would have been the main reason there rather than John McGinn. I think if a team came in with 50 million, then yeah. Thinking about which teams that may be, West Ham have got a bit to splash. Would they offer Souček as part of that deal? And would you take Souček as part of that deal? I don't think I would. A Leicester, but could Leicester afford 50 million for him? I'm sure they could pay 50 million if they sell Tielemans, but I don't think they're going to splash that kind of money. The only other two options who I think he would be good for, well, the Celtic, but they're not going to spend what they need to get in. Man United, I think, would be a good fit for him. I think he'd be the type of Roy Keane midfielder that they need. He's combative in the tackle and that. I hope he doesn't go. But, if we could get a Conor Gallagher in permanently, I think he's got a lot of potential as well. They're similar-ish players. You hope that you don't get rid of all of the DNA of the team, but money talks in football, doesn't it? And if you get somebody as good as Conor Gallagher, or you look at Newcastle, I'm sure that there was a lot of fans that loved Joe Willock after his amazing run for them last year, and they brought in Bruno Guimaraes, and whilst they play slightly different positions, they'd say that Bruno is a massive upgrade on Willock. And if you can upgrade and you can improve, you'd be silly not to, wouldn't you, really?
I'd say in terms of if West Ham come in for 50 million plus Souček and we get Gallagher, and we are slightly in the realms of fantasy here, so I don't feel too bad in saying this, despite my love of John McGinn. If we are in that situation, Souček 50 million, Gallagher for, say, 30 million, or potentially what the price would be, I think we'd have to think about it. Certainly. And if it was a situation where West Ham put that 50 million plus Souček on the table, I think, I'd say to McGinn, we've had this offer. If you want to go, we'll let you have a talk with West Ham, see if you can agree terms. In terms of 2 for 1, Souček, Gallagher's younger. I agree with you. McGinn's got more to give. I mean, I don't think that situation's happening. I mean, I don't think West Ham are offering 50 million plus Souček. But yeah, I mean, if we're talking in those realms of possibility, then I think that would be something to consider. But yeah, I think unsurprisingly, if he's still at Villa in the first 11 start next season, I'm not going to be particularly disappointed. But speaking of somebody who probably isn't going to be in the first 11, I'd say unfortunately, it's a bit of a shame, really, what happened to Gilbert. He's in his final year of the contract. He's expected to leave, according to Greg Evans. Is it just a sentimental sadness in terms of, you remember his goal against Leicester in the League Cup and a few good games? Or do you think that he actually could have a role in this Villa squad, or has his time very much gone?
I think he could have a role in the squad. I think he's a good defender. You know, there's a lot of Villa fans who will say, "Oh, you only like him because he pumped his fist when he made a tackle against Arsenal when we won 1-0." Yeah, but do I like that about a defender? I want him to celebrate the tackles that they're putting in. You know, his goal against Leicester was a nice one, as was his goal against Crewe as well. Let's not forget that in the big 5-1 win against them. I hope he sticks around. I know that he very much likes it at the Villa, doesn't he? He speaks positively on his social media about us. He's become a bit of a cult hero without ever really playing too many games for us. It's a bit like a Salafo, isn't it, in many ways? However, I like to see him stick around, especially with Kessler, Hayden potentially going out on loan again somewhere. So yeah, let's get Gilbert back within the squad and hopefully pushing Matty Cash to be even better than he has been over the last season.
Well, we will see what happens with Gilbert, whether he also will be playing along with Cameron Archer against Walsall in that early pre-season friendly. I've plucked enough random players out of the air. Are there any players you want to touch on in terms of where they're currently standing in the squad and where Greg Evans thinks that they currently are in the squad? Or is that just too much fun, even for Mr. Trinity, for one day?
I'm going to give you one more. And then I tell you what, I think that leaves it nicely for our next episode. I was thinking about saying about Tyrone Mings, but after we saw today that he's following our very own Conor Sherry on Twitter, I don't think he's going anywhere.
Nope. One captain to another.
One captain to another, man. The main man, the other main man. The one player who divides so much opinion, yet has so much promise and has shown glimpses. He's shown more in 20 minutes than he has in 90-minute performances. Leon Bailey. What do you do with him? Do you give him? Do you hope that he comes good? Do you stick with him? Or do you say, see you later, Leon, if we can recoup our 30 million?
Well, the comment from Greg Evans in respect to Bay is plan to make him unstoppable on any level. If we can get him unstoppable on any level, that sounds quite good to me. So I'd keep him. But I think it's in terms of, I wouldn't look to sell Bailey for footballing reasons. In terms of, I don't think it's not a situation where I don't think he's good enough. I think in the issue with Bailey is, as we touched upon in previous episodes, is fitness. And you mentioned 20 minutes there against Everton. However good somebody is for 20 minutes, there's little point in having them in a squad if you're trying to compete on, 2-3 frontiers, various competitions. If you're going to have somebody fit for 20 minutes for every 7 or 8 games, especially, in terms of limits of 25-man squad in the Premier League. I know in terms of under 21 players don't count, so you can get a little creative in terms of who you register and who you don't. It's purely a fitness thing for Bailey. If we can get him fit, then I think there is 100% a place for him in the Villa squad. It's just a massive if. And obviously the work that will be going on at the training ground, Bodymore Heath, with the fitness staff is going to be, I think that's going to determine his future a lot more than whether he's good enough in terms of football. And I think it's almost a side issue in terms of footballing, whether he's good enough. Because I think a fit Leon Bailey, whilst maybe he's not playing every week, I certainly think he's involved in the majority of match day squads, adding a bit of something different, skill, trickery, pace. So if we can get him fit, then I would be all on board the Leon Bailey train. I mean, quite aptly, in a week of network rail strikes, the Leon Bailey train has been delayed for at least 12 months. But you got to remain hopeful that a deal can be done. So for me, if we can get him fit, I'd keep him. What about you? Would you be looking to keep him around, or would you be seeing if anybody will give us our money back?
He's the player I alluded to when talking about Bertie. If we can get him into a striker role rather than a number 10 role, then yeah, keep him around most definitely. Use his pace, get him forward, work on that finishing. He's a good player, he's a tricky player, he's a quick player, he can score goals as well. He proved that in Germany. He's not going to become, West Brom standard overnight. So for me, yeah, we keep Leon Bailey at least for another season. And if things don't go to plan because of injuries or because of form, then we cash in on him next year.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree. Hopefully we can get him in a run of games, stay fit, and I think he'll be an asset to the Villa squad, and especially where we're trying to get to in terms of higher up the table. And we're worrying about Leon Bailey's fitness. You don't have to worry about our fitness, because we have just got through another episode of Talk of the Trinity. We are keeping our match sharpness ready throughout the course of the summer on our Twitter page at Talk Trinity, by keeping you right up to date with all the Villa news, rumours, throwing in a few polls along the way just to get the fans' opinions. You can see kind of our fitness evolution if you want to watch our YouTube channel, Talk of the Trinity, whereby you can look back on our previous episodes and guest stars and all our predictions, some of which may even have been correct once. Or you can just listen to our audio tones on our audio providers, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Google, some other ones. We're on FanHub. We're in some other places. But before I pass you over to Mr. Trinity himself for his final thoughts, thanks very much for listening. Really appreciated. Really appreciate all the likes, retweets, subscribes, other technical words. And we will be back with you shortly for more Villa news and maybe even a signing or two. We will have to wait and see. But from me, thanks very much for listening, and speak to you soon.
Yeah, just to reiterate, thank you to all of the fans and followers who continue to show us love and support. It's very much appreciated. The reason we do it, apart from also just liking to have a catch up and chat about the Villa, but stay with us. This summer is going to be exciting. There's a lot more incoming into the Villa. You've seen that we've had a couple of incomings with Paddy and also Gareth helping us out and joining us on the podcast. Plenty more people to come on. If you're part of a Villa fan group somewhere, or if you're a Villa fan in another part of the world, whether that's just in Bromsgrove or whether it's in, sunny Australia, get in touch with us. We'd love to have you on and hear your views about the Villa from where you are and what it's like to be a Villa fan somewhere else outside of the direct hit that is the cathedral of Villa Park. We will be making sure that this summer we have a marquee episode which will see Connor Sherry join us so that we can bask in all of his glory of doing everything that we've all wanted to do, and that is captain the Villa. And if he wants to bring his mate Hourihane on, then we might be out. Until then, though, until next time, Baz is Villa till he dies. I'm Villa till I die. Cheers, sir. Thank you very much. Up the Villa.